Gervonta Davis is about to get back in the ring against Lamont Roach. And while Roach is taller, younger, and has a lot more to gain than Tank, this is why Tank versus Roach will not be close.
So Tank is back in the ring, unfortunately not against Lomachenko, not against Shakur Stevenson, not even against Keyshawn Davis, the champions at the lightweight division, but instead against Lamont Roach, a 130-pound WBA world champion. And when you look through Tank's career, pretty much all of his opponents are either taller than him or bigger than him, and Roach is a little bit taller and actually fights lower than Tank does. Coming up in weight, yes, he has a lot to gain, but that doesn't mean that he's just gonna pull off the upset. Roach is a huge underdog for a reason in this fight, and Tank is probably gonna make it look pretty easy. Roach has one loss in his career to Jamel Herring, where in that fight he was getting countered pretty easily, overextending on shots, and it's hard to see Gervonta Davis not catching him with something throughout 12 rounds of this fight. We've seen it with all of his opponents, him breaking them down to the body, to the head. He's a pound for pound talent right now in the sport, so I just don't see this fight being close whatsoever.
And when you got a guy like Gervonta Davis who is so technical, puts it all together with his footwork, southpaw, is able to counter beautifully, the next flush which puts people out, and is just in general kind of an underrated technical boxer because many people just see his highlight reel KOs and assume he's just a massive power puncher. But in reality, most of his KOs come from just clean, flush counters or just beautiful shots that land clean. And he just sets up people throughout the fight, in which he might start a little slower to begin the rounds and to begin the fight in general, but he picks up, analyzes his opponent, and finds the perfect setups to win the fight regardless. And that's why he's undefeated, that's why he's put out so many people, and it's very possible Lamont Roach could just be next out of these guys. As we have seen in a lot of his fights, he is open to getting countered. His body has been open before. He does do well if he makes it to the later rounds, but in the earlier rounds, it's very possible Tank could find a shot that could land and maybe just stop him then and there.
Yeah, I've seen Tank put out people that, in my opinion, are even better than Lamont Roach. Mario Barrios, even Isaac Cruz, Ryan Garcia, Leo Santa Cruz, could even argue Frank Martin. Like, Tank kind of seems like he's beyond this level a little bit, and it seems like he could easily be the best 135-pounder fighter in the world, and it's unfortunate that we're not really seeing that, and he's not in the ring against the likes of Shakur Stevenson. I would definitely like to see them unify. The one thing about Tank that you can't say about many other boxers in the sport is that people will watch regardless of who he fights. Whoever he fights, he's going to draw a crowd, he's going to draw an audience, because he is one of the faces of boxing and one of the most exciting fighters in the sport. He always puts on a show. He's very entertaining in the ring, whether it's him doing backflips after knocking opponents out cold or the zesty clips you see on Instagram. Tank Davis is just a character, and I just don't see him losing anytime soon, and definitely not to Lamont Roach in this next fight.
Yeah, I think maybe people are a little disappointed that Gervonta Davis on paper is fighting against Lamont Roach and not a better competition, someone that has a bigger name, a bigger legacy, as he is kind of already 30 now and people would be expecting him to fight against top competition now. But regardless, this is definitely going to be a big fight, as whenever Tank fights, there's definitely a large audience, large crowd, and people love to see his highlight reel KOs and stoppages. And I doubt many people think Lamont Roach is gonna win this fight, to be honest. It's just a level difference in general. Tank at the top of the sport.
The real reason, in my opinion, Lamont Roach really doesn't have much of a chance in this fight is because he's not really a knockout artist. He doesn't really knock people out with one punch like that. He has a 40% KO ratio, so he's gonna have to go out there and outbox Tank over 12 rounds without getting caught and without getting outboxed by Tank himself. It's not like Tank can't box, can't move, doesn't have a high boxing IQ. Tank is one of the smartest fighters at 135, and he has the power, he has the countering ability, and it's just really hard to see a path to victory for Lamont Roach. Is he gonna just outbox Tank Davis? I just don't see it. None of Tank's other opponents were able to do it, and a lot of them were even better boxers on paper than Lamont Roach is. So it's hard to see a path to victory for him, and that's why I feel like this fight will just not be close, and Tank will be able to figure him out, break him down slowly but surely, the counters on the back foot, walking him into shots. Even recently we've seen Tank be a little bit more aggressive in fights, walk his opponents down like he did against Frank Martin a little bit more. In my opinion, it's just going to be a rough night for Lamont Roach, who is kind of just being set up as a lamb to the slaughter to get knocked out and be a highlight reel for Gervonta Davis. That's why they're taking this fight, and that's why Tank is getting back into the ring this week. So Tank just has so many more ways to win and has proven it at the top level time and time again. I don't see how he doesn't do it again.
And we've even seen Lamont Roach struggle in the past against southpaws, like we saw against Jamel Herring, in which he definitely had a lot of troubles there. He did find a bit of success in that fight, but in general, he wasn't fully able to put it all together. And it's not exactly like Jamel Herring is on the level of Tank Davis, so it's definitely just might be a rough night for Lamont Roach. It's going to be hard to see if he's really going to be able to put much together, how much success he can really have in this fight against Tank. And honestly, even if he's able to have a decent amount of success or even making it to the final bell would be a huge achievement for him regardless.
Yeah, I mean, Tank does have everything to lose here, but it's not like he hasn't been in this position before. He's been a huge favorite. His last fight against Frank Martin, most people knew it was going to happen before the bell even rang, and it seems to be a similar situation here. In that fight, Tank took his time, pressured, put Martin on the back foot, and was just getting closer and closer to that chin each round that fight went on before finding that uppercut, left hand, putting Martin down, and he's done that to so many opponents at this point. I think it's safe to say Tank will probably take his time early on, download the data, not be too aggressive against Lamont Roach, and then slowly but surely start to settle into the fight, landing the left hand, maybe even walking Roach down. Roach isn't that big of a guy, doesn't have the most emphatic power, doesn't have the most knockouts, only a 40% KO ratio. So if Tank feels comfortable, he doesn't really respect the power, he will just walk Roach down, walk him into shots, set up traps, and I think he will get the knockout probably from the 6th to the 10th round.
And it will definitely be a question to see if after this fight, maybe Tank is able to take a little upgrade in competition and he fights some of the bigger names in the sport. There is definitely a lot of fights out there, and with his name, it's definitely possible that he could get some big fights that really ups his legacy and his resume. But the issue is we saw on social media the whole back and forth between Tank Davis and Turki Al-Sheikh, and he's really not on board with the whole Saudi thing and wanting to fight over there in Saudi. But currently that's just kind of what it is, with Saudi putting on the biggest and best fights right now, and they pretty much have most of the top guys in the sport, like Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and Shakur Stevenson's, and as well even Teofimo, which would all be possible matchups for Tank Davis and the best fights that he could get. So with him not being on board with Saudi Arabia, who really is there for him to fight that is that top echelon, that top fighter?
Yeah, I mean, Keyshawn Davis is definitely out there. He's with Top Rank, and obviously everyone wants to see these unification fights to see who the best man is in the weight class, unify all these world champions, but it seems unlikely. Lomachenko doesn't seem like he's looking to return anytime soon, and he's potentially retiring, won't fight Tank. Maybe they could do the Shakur Stevenson fight. That is another one that people have been calling for. And for Tank, you can't look ahead of what's in the future when you have an opponent in front of you, and he does have Lamont Roach booked to fight him this week, so he's got to be locked in and not overlooking Roach.
So definitely going to be a tough one for Lamont Roach, and it's very likely that Tank Davis could just go out there and stop Lamont Roach.
Yeah, I just don't see this one being competitive. Usually they aren't. When Tank gets in the ring, he's knocked out 28 out of his 30 opponents. The only ones to go the distance are Isaac Cruz and another fighter earlier on in his career. So considering Tank has put out 95% of his opponents, he's definitely going to do it again, and Lamont Roach is just another victim, in our opinion, to Gervonta Davis's run in the sport. But it's always going to be a show when Gervonta's in the ring, so let us know your thoughts in the comments down below on Gervonta fighting Lamont Roach. Is this going to be maybe closer than we think, or is Tank just going to smoke him? If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out the video on screen for more Punch Talk.